Hello, everyone, and welcome back to JaianMusic Notes, the podcast where we deep dive into anime's music, breaking down iconic soundtracks such as today, Spirited Away, one of Ghibli's most celebrated films, composed by the legendary Hisaishi. And today, to explore it all with me, I have Gabriel. How are you?
I'm pretty good. What about you?
Doing very well. Very excited to have you on today. For the
you.
people who do not know you, who do not have the pleasure of knowing you, Gabriel, very talented audio engineer and composer. Tell us a little bit about your background and your love story with the music in Spirited Away.
Well, I've been playing music for almost 17 years now. 17 years. Wow. Yeah, it's a lot of time. I'm doing my best. That's quite the entrance.
It's plural
you got,
after one, I think.
Yeah, you're right. But it is what it is. I'm French first, so sometimes there's gonna be a little issues like that. But that's totally fine. So yeah, I'm currently a sound engineer. Also, I teach at the Polytechnique, the school, the university. Yeah, and it's funny because the way I started getting into Ghibli movies is because of my students asking me.
Really?
About, yeah, absolutely. It was always movies, that I wanted to have a look at, but never really took the time. And once I got COVID, I thought, you know what, now's the moment. And I got through Spirited Away first.
Yeah.
And I was blown away.
Absolutely.
It's a crazy movie. Mm-hmm.
It's a great movie. I'm so glad you're putting it like that. It's a good pandemic watch for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was dead sick, and I could still 100% focus on it.
Yeah. And before we talk all about the great music of what literally got Gabriel off of his feet, removing COVID from his system one note at a time, I want to thank the sponsor of today's episode, Laser Audio Technologies. Whether you're a composer, producer, or audiophile, Laser Audio offers top-tier plugins such as Fram and Glow. And if you use code JaianMusic, you get 25% off your purchase at checkout, and every dollar from that code goes right back into the podcast, such as GoPro Kyo, who does all of the artwork. All right, how did you feel just on a major scale, major outlook, the soundtrack of Spirited Away? Extremely orchestral, extremely beautiful, very melodic. What were your initial thoughts when you heard those first few notes?
Well, one thing that Joe does is that it's a lot of major and extended harmonies, and he's gonna arpeggiate those as well, and we're talking about dynamic growth too. So you're gonna notice often it's gonna fade in. It's gonna start really smooth with only a few elements, and then it's gonna get more and more intense as you go. There's an incredibly great interpretation from Joe himself, actually, on YouTube. If you ever plan on digging deeper on it, yeah, absolutely, you really should.
Very interesting.
It's perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you talking about the one with the full orchestra one?
Absolutely.
That he did. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I definitely watched that. It's expansive. It's super expansive, and I think you can definitely play with dynamics a lot more with the more layers you add in. And he has a really great way of introducing that. I think of the song. I think it was the very first song in the film, almost it was called Reprise.
Yeah.
And it starts with this really gentle piano melody, and it grows into, like you said, those arpeggiated chords, those suspended harmonies, the gradual dynamic growth. I definitely relate to that. There's so many good songs, and I used to do these episodes where I would go song to song, but I don't even want to go song to song. I just want to talk about the vibe of the movie, the emotional growth. How do you feel because the way I see film music and anime music is it supports the story. How do you
Absolutely.
feel like the music contributes to the growth of the character?
Well, see, that's kind of where I was going with you before
Okay,
before you
great.
said it. It feels
Perfect.
like the whole soundtrack feels like one big song. If you go
Really?
front to back, yeah, for at least to me for the whole 55 minutes, it really feels like that's the story. That's what you're being told.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like there are definitely like key songs and key moments. Like obviously,
Absolutely.
there's like one of my favorite ones is when No Face and Chihiro are taking the train. To the
Same
station.
here. Well,
Yeah. The sixth
mhm.
station.
Yeah.
What an amazing soundtrack! Just like a really light piano,
Mhm.
very bizarre chords with like sevenths and just like harmonies that like kind of fit together but kind of feel dissonant.
Yeah.
It's how do you feel about like the use of dissonance and the use of like suspended harmonies and all those types of melodical mixes that Joe reaches for a lot throughout the different songs in Spirited Away.
I feel like it's done perfectly. There's no other way to say it. Especially for No Face and Yubaba at the beginning of her theme. That right away, this person is somewhat up to no good.
Yeah. It's like it's not villainous. Pardon me. Ooh, I voice crack on that one. It's
all
not
good.
villainous, but it's mischievous.
Exactly.
It's mischievous. It's
Yeah.
like what are you trying to pull here? Like I don't feel like you're on my side, but like you kind of run the whole Spirited Away world, like the fantasy side of it. You're the boss of it,
Exactly.
but I don't want you to be the boss of it.
Yeah. If you hear that song and you think this is the boss of what's in front of me, it's like a bad boss that for a job you're trying to apply.
Yeah, a little bit. I can definitely see. Here's a completely left side question
Okay.
for you. Do you feel like the music in Spirited Away, like forget that like really large orchestral video I was talking about earlier.
Absolutely.
Do you feel like it's minimalistic?
And
And if so, yes, and if not, why not? I'm really curious.
at times, and how could I explain that? Certain elements really are, because there's only sometimes like a little piano and nothing more than that.
Exactly.
But the way that it's written is very complex when you dig deeper into it.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Like the notation is not simple.
Exactly. So
The
it's yes
notation
and
is-
no.
Exactly. That's that. I felt the exact same way in the sense that like you do have those like we're talking about reprise, which like starts
Yeah.
with a soft piano and builds into more and more and more and more and more. Which I think that's what it is. Like the music has the way I see it is you will start with a minimalistic solo piano introduction,
Yeah.
which you don't even notice the piano. coming in.
Absolutely.
You don't even notice it. You don't even pay attention to it. And as the scene grows and as the story develops, you get into these larger dynamic
Yeah.
that absolutely blow into proportions. I know you kind of touched it in the intro here, but structurally speaking, do you think that's something that works more often than not with like the story, the grandioseness of Spirited Away? Which, in my opinion, I'll just say it, it's anime Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
I'll say it.
I get what you mean. Honestly, when I first saw it, I had never seen anything like it personally. It's really got its own world, kind of like what Alice in Wonderland was back then. It's got its own thing going. Like you're not gonna see another universe with a talking bunny like that. In Spirited Away, you're not gonna see another universe with parents turning into pigs.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And that's just
I completely
one
agree
of the
with you.
examples.
Yeah, no, that's just one of the many examples you
Yeah.
can point to.
Absolutely.
For sure. And then going more into we were talking about like the tone of like these songs and how they're put together, the orchestration and texture.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely go with like strings, woodwinds, pianos, a little bit of pads here and
Yeah,
there. um to me everything felt very floaty.
absolutely.
How do you describe and or analyze the instrumentation of the
Well,
music?
that's the use of suspended chords. You know, a lot of if you go to really if you go back to really basic music theory, um, often people are gonna say if you want to guess what a major chord is and a minor chord is by ear, you know, major is gonna be sad, major is gonna be happy. My bad. Minor is gonna be sad. Suspended are often this kind of dreamy sound that you're gonna get. This is where this is what's being used a lot into Joe's music. You know,
Yeah, for this one,
and when
absolutely.
you arpeggiate it the way he does, one thing I really like about a lot of the songs in the soundtrack, it feels like someone is singing to you.
Yes.
I don't know if you've
Yes.
had, yeah, you've had the
Yes.
same feeling. Perfect. It really
Yeah, yeah, no,
feels
I
like
definitely feel sung.
someone's
It
talking.
feels sung.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it feels vocalized, and it feels like there's a story behind everything.
Absolutely.
And you have like bright orchestral textures,
Hmm.
and then you have ominous, more sparse arrangements, like with no face, and like when
Absolutely.
the parents become pigs and
Yeah.
everything. Like, how do you feel like the difference between those two apply? What they create for the scene? Like, what effect did it have on you when you listen to that?
Well, that's one thing I find perfect about Spirited Away. It's the leitmotif. Um,
The character themes.
exactly, but
Yeah.
they change depending of the situation. You know,
Right.
um,
Absolutely.
you're gonna if you really like listen to the music in the back while listening to the movie. That's the first thing I noticed. As in, it's gonna be often the same or very similar melodies, but it's the arrangement behind it. It's gonna be
Yeah.
very subtle, but if you really um, focus on that part, you're gonna notice like there's a lot of melodies that come back. There's a lot of similar intervals that are gonna be used, but
Yes.
everything
Yes.
else around it is gonna be changed. You know, so for example, when it's gonna be something very smooth, the beginning, for example, on One Summer's Day, feels like some kind of a warm hug. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's a family of three. You know, just having a good time. But then, on the opposite, when you're gonna see, when you're gonna have a moment like No Face, like the main theme for No Face, it's very intense. But sometimes it's gonna be very similar melodies with little things changed between those two kinds of moments.
Absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned One Summer's Day because like I wanted to ask you about your favorite song of the entire soundtrack, and for me, it's a close first and second place with like the Sixth Station and One Summer's Day. One Summer's
Mhm.
Day really is a warm blanket wrapping around you, and it really is
Mhm.
a happy, bringing you joy, smiling, and very beautifully orchestrated piece.
Mhm.
Yeah, what were your thoughts like on that piece, and like what's your favorite piece? Like, if we look at the songs individually, because I feel like we've been talking about like their effect, the way they're constructed, but like if you take it like song by song, like what are those standouts? What are your favorites? Tell me everything.
Um, One Summer's Day is definitely a good song. My favorite has to be the theme for No Face. Even
Really?
though you know, like absolutely, I've got I've got a metal background. I listen to a lot of metal music,
You
so
do. This is true. This is very true.
yeah.
Gab makes amazing
Mhm.
metal music. Linked in the description, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. But you know, there's very similar elements sometimes when it comes to classical music and metal music. Very intense elements
Such as
that you
what?
can very much notice. Um, when it comes to the theme for No Face, right away you get a big hit, a big punch. It feels like a punch in the face, That's
Yes, it
exactly
feels
that is
ominous
something.
almost.
Absolutely. And it makes you somewhat uncomfortable. I really like the intro to the Yubaba's theme for that reason as well. Not because it's a punch in the face, but because it feels somewhat uneasy, I
Yes.
really like
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
when it comes to music. For some reason.
Yeah,
That's
it's something
just
that
me.
works for you. It's something that yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think that it's so interesting that you mentioned like having a metal background, and it makes more sense that the more ominous and dare I say, and I don't think metal music is representative of this word, people. The more evil songs are appeal to you more because they have that like musical fabric of kind of like raising your eyebrow, being like, this is not a major simple happy thing. No. This is like a weird, ominous, almost evil, like I said, track that just kind of sets the tone of like, this is No Face. Like he's
Absolutely.
a weirdo. He's a weirdo.
Exactly.
So he needs weird music.
Well, it's funny that you mention evil and say, "Oh, that's not what I mean." But sometimes you would be right. Some of the people that are really important for metal music are downright evil. I'm not gonna go into the details because it can get really grim. But
Definitely.
sometimes you're right. Some parts of metal history have really questionable people and actions. So
Actually, though,
mhm.
you're making me. I have to ask this. If
Oh,
you,
good.
because I haven't really had a metal guy on the show yet, and I
That's
think
fine.
this could be an interesting angle to take.
Mhm.
If you were to write a metal piece for a scene of Spirited Away, do you know what scene or how you would compose that song? You don't even have to name a scene, but like, how would you go about it if you could write a metal piece for Spirited Away?
I've said a lot. I've talked a lot about No Face, so I'm gonna go into another angle, maybe like maybe Yubaba, when she's chasing Shihiro.
Oh yeah.
Exactly, that would be a great angle. For maybe
I
something
can
like
already hear the double kicks. I can already hear the double kicks.
Exactly. And it's great because you could add a lot of symphonic elements to it
You could absolutely
at the same time. There's a lot of bands that do that actually. I'd see something that sounds like Septic Flesh, for example, or maybe Cradle of Filth, because sometimes he's got those screeching highs, like that could sound like a witch. So it
That's
would
so
be
interesting to me.
Yeah, I'll send you links after.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once we're done recording,
Absolutely.
you'll see exactly what I mean. I feel like it would be perfect. Obviously, No Face as well would be good for that. But for example, if I had to pick a scene, it's or a moment in the movie, it's when he goes nuts and starts eating other spirits.
That is a good metal moment. You know what's one I just thought of in my head? When Haku's
Yeah?
falling from the sky. When Haku
That could work
is
as
all
well.
up in the sky as a dragon and just I feel like, you know what it is? I feel like Metals has this like epic energy, and I feel like you just choose an epic scene. Just choose a grandiose scene, and let's just get every single right symbol we could find, and like let's just you know what I mean? Just like time it in, like just like knock it in.
Absolutely. That could be very good as well. Yeah, I'd see that. Maybe some kind of a more melodic thing, like a power metal thing, maybe. That could fit really well.
Power
into that.
metal makes sense to me when you say that. Power metal does make sense to me.
More like of a Dragon Force kind of thing. Like really
yes. I agree.
Lots of shredding.
Yeah. Yeah. Dragon
kind of
Force,
thing.
like through the fires and spirited ways. I agree.
through the spirited flames.
Through a spirit. The spirited flames is perfect. Oh, that's so good. Oh, thank you for creating the clip of the episode.
You're welcome. I've done my good action today. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Absolutely.
being a
Without
great
a doubt.
host, by the way.
Thank you. I try.
You're welcome,
I
you're
actually I
welcome.
don't. It's all natural. I'm kidding.
Oh, you're doing good. You're doing good. You're
Thank you,
nailing
buddy.
it.
I appreciate that, man.
You're welcome.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. I mean, I only have a few more points here. I feel like because the Spirited Away soundtrack, it's not like a soundtrack with like a bajillion songs, and they
Yeah.
kind of all have that uniformity of like they're all kind of orchestral. They all kind of have those like suspended notes, and yes,
Yeah.
there's diversity across. But I'm noticing there might not be as much as because I was talking with Jacob Lacroix, which is another guest
Okay.
who's an audio engineer as well.
Nice.
But he works more. He engineers more pop music.
Okay.
And we were talking about how he would like engineer like the vocals of like these songs and everything.
Yeah.
But I feel like the music we were talking about My Neighbor Totoro, but I feel like the music in here, when you compare it to the one in Totoro, and obviously these films are independent.
Absolutely.
But they're the staples of Ghibli, and I think you have to unequivocally say they're the staples of Ghibli music afterwards, because you're attached to the bigger films. But this one, the music to me, like if you like had to like do a macro
Yeah.
analysis of the music in Spirited Away, would you agree or disagree that it is more uniform? Like the songs are kind of like all within the same genre. Yes, they're different, but they don't go wildly crazy all over the
Absolutely,
place.
yeah. I feel like you can tell when you listen to one of the songs which movie it's from.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree with
Exactly.
that. Absolutely.
because
And
you're.
what do you think gives it more away? You know, like why is it like that? Like why does
for
your music
exam-
brain think it like that?
For example, Spirited Away has some very intense moment. Totoro is really it's really wholesome throughout the whole movie. You know.
That's true.
I'll be
very
honest,
true.
I'm not a sensitive person, but one of the movies that wanted to make me bawl my eyes out is Totoro because of the end.
Yeah, Totoro's it's a different kind of punch. It's not the No Face soundtrack kind of punch. And that's all I'm gonna say.
It's a wholesome punch.
It's a wholesome
say it
punch.
like that.
It's not a One Punch Man
Yeah.
punch. It's a wholesome punch.
Absolutely, yeah. Meanwhile, Spirited Away feels like somewhat of an adventure. You know.
Yes.
It's
Yes,
very
it's,
intense.
No, I agree with you. I was agreeing.
Perfect. It's very intense at times, but for different reasons. You know, like you're in Totoro, you're not gonna have parents turning into pigs or spirits being eaten, for example, and the soundtracks reflect that for both movies.
Yes, they do. That's that. I can't disagree with that. And then I think it's one thing I really like talking about on these Ghibli music episodes that I've been doing lately is the impact and the legacy of these songs. I was blessed enough to whilst in Japan go to the Studio Ghibli Museum and
I'm
like look
so
at
jealous.
I'm sorry. And it's become a meme, bro. Every guest episode I bring up my trip to Japan and everyone goes, I'm jealous, and I feel bad every time. So
No, it's
I'm
all
sorry for
good.
perpetuating this.
It's fine. You
but-
don't have. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. There's a thing about when you go to that place and you walk into that museum, I just felt like every single piece of Ghibli music that I have covered in the past like play in my brain. Like they
That's
just all
beautiful.
come back. And you also have this thing where you go there and you have access to a cinema and they play exclusive Ghibli short films that are only available there.
Really?
Yes, you get a little cinema ticket and everything. It's very cute. It's very amazing. And everyone has to. If you're listening to this podcast and you are planning a trip to Japan, please go.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm gonna have to go. I need to see those short movies.
You have to. You absolutely have to. I completely agree. But I feel like the soundtrack of Spirited Away and like a movie like Totoro, they have like a very long lasting impact and legacy. Like you
Absolutely.
can see it among fans. r/Ghibli Music is a subreddit that exists, and it's actively daily like looked into and everything. So what do you think about like how and why is it so impactful? And why does it resonate to you as a fan?
Well, it sets a standard, you know. Um, there's good, bad, and then there's incredible. And anything that Ghibli made is on that third level, is incredible for me. And it's not just on the music, it's the whole thing. It's the writing, it's the
Yeah,
animation. Um, everything, at least at the time, I don't know about now, but was done by hand, like
I
the
believe you're right.
drawings.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah, yeah.
I know that because my dad worked in animation back then sometime,
Okay,
and that was the golden, that was like the perfection was Ghibli movies.
right. Okay,
Okay.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because it,
on
mhm.
no, no, go ahead, please, please, please finish.
Perfect, because you see it's done so good it feels like it wasn't done by hand,
Yes,
but it was.
yeah, absolutely,
There's.
absolutely. It is so beautiful that you wouldn't think it. And when I was researching a bit more about the soundtrack, like
Mhm.
obviously 2001, Spirited Away soundtrack comes out,
Yeah.
but there's also a 2020 re-release on vinyl, and the fact
Mhm.
that it's still like out there and like gets re-released like 20 years later,
Yeah.
it just shows like how inspiring and how like sought out this music is. And
Mhm.
there's so many songs that I even like talked about, but you got like Chihiro's Waltz, which is like one of the most beautiful
Mhm.
waltz in Ghibli music, in my opinion, and anime
Yeah.
music. I love. It's a musical Chihiro. Like it's
Mhm.
Chihiro as a song. Like the character Chihiro is there with that song right away. Do you recall which piece I'm referring to when I say Chihiro's Waltz?
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
I feel like this is Spirited Away, for example, is one of
Hmm.
the pieces of art that even if you make a masterpiece yourself, you can
Yeah.
only be as good. You cannot really be better. It's gonna be different, but it's not gonna be better in its own right.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
for
Absolutely.
example, if you make like an incredible movie like that, that's amazing. But Spirited Away is still gonna hold its ground.
Every day of the week. Every day of the week, it will hold
Absolutely.
its ground. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And music wise as well.
Yeah, absolutely. To be completely honest with you, I feel like I've said everything I personally want to say. Do you have like other big topics, or if you want to go to closing thoughts, we can. It really depends on like how much you have left, because I've kind of hit all the points I wanted to say, Gab. If I'm being honest with you.
That's fine by me as well. I'm just having a
Yeah,
good time,
perfect.
honestly. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm having a great time, but like it's it's one album. It's one
Hmm.
album. The soundtrack is only a few that so many minutes long, and it is how it is. Maybe before we get to
Hmm.
final thoughts, there is one more question
Okay.
that I wrote down here that I forgot to get to here. But how has the music in Spirited Away, do you think, influenced modern composers? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, once again, it set the standard. You
It's at
cannot.
the standard. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
You know, you cannot write. How do I explain that? Um, Once movies like Spirited Away are out there, automatically I feel like you have to step your game up as a composer, as a musician, as anyone else related to the movie industry, because it's just that's the level you got to reach now.
Absolutely, man. I completely agree.
Mhm.
I
That
completely agree
that's
with you. I think it's yeah.
that's kind of why that's kind of what my dad was telling me about the animation within Ghibli movies.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
the standard now. It had to be that good,
Yes.
or at least
It has
like
to be
you
that good.
had to do your best to get on that level.
Yes. I completely agree with you. I think setting the standard is the best way to put it. Um Honestly, I'll go to my final thoughts here. Like Spirited Away, I'm so happy that this topic clicked for the two of us.
Hmm.
It's a soundtrack that I encourage every listener of the podcast, I don't say this very often, but go do a front to back listen of the album. Do a front to back listen of the album. It's so gorgeous, and it's so gorgeous for all the reasons we just said earlier. And once you've had enough of that, you can also go listen to all my Studio Ghibli covers that I've made, because there's so many that I made I love so much. I love them so much. I even did with a collaborative piece with a friend. Like we took the chords of the Sixth Station, and we added like weird ambient arpeggiator synthesizers, harmonically layered under the chords, and it just gave this really bizarre like orchestral ambient, which I guess I haven't told you, Gab, but like that's really the classical crossover style I like going to. Like I cross over these pieces, and I'm like, I want to make them more ambient. I really like playing in ambient music. And I really find that like anime music and ambient music, they both start with an A, so it has to be the perfect match. But in all seriousness, it matches really well stylistically.
Absolutely.
But yes, what are your final thoughts on this soundtrack?
Well, it's funny. I'm just gonna keep going on your point for a little moment. It's funny that you mentioned that anime music and ambient music are very similar in some ways, because both, when you listen to them, they sound very to the untrained ear, they sound very simple, but
yes,
the amount of skill required to do an interesting ambient track is nuts, at least to me personally.
I agree with you so much. But then you got people like, and I have to shout out this person because I'm very inspired by the work. You got people like, and this is off topic, not really Ghibli-esque anymore. Skip ahead if you don't want to be listening
That's
to
all
this.
good.
You have people like Michiru Aoyama, which is an ambient composer in Japan who composes an album a day of ambient music.
Okay, an album a day?
I am not making this up. 8 songs a day, every single day.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you that
music.
name after the podcast, because
I got you, and it's good, and it's really good. It's really, really good. It's that thing where like I saw someone out there, grinding on music more intensely than me, and I like that. I'm like, oh, he's doing an album a day. I'm only doing 2 to 3 covers a week and a podcast, which is already a lot. But like some people just take it to that like good, bad, and incredible. Like you said earlier.
I can only respect that.
Exactly.
How does he do it? Is it improv? Is it?
It's already it's all explained in an article. There's some subreddits and stuff. I definitely get into it. I even bought like a thing where like he explained his creative process and like how he gets listeners. Like I deep dived this one for sure.
Okay.
Right away it caught my interest. All right, Gab, if people listen to this and they enjoyed your thoughts and everything, where can they find you? What projects are you like working on? Like, what do you want to plug and shout out so people can like go check you out?
Well, right now you got my Instagram. That's about it, because there's a lot of things I'm working on behind the scenes at the moment. I do not have the right to talk about all of them.
I got
I'll definitely.
This is coming out in early June, probably late May, early June. If that gives you an idea.
All right.
If you want to time something, but go ahead.
It's all good. Maybe there's gonna be an album out by then, so people will know. But
perfect.
Other than that, there's not much I can say to the other things I'm working on. Unfortunately,
that's perfect. Leave him wanting more. It's a strategy that's worked for years. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
You're right.
Perfect. So thank you everyone for listening to this episode of JaianMusic Notes. Once again, a reminder: the podcast is sponsored by Laser Audio Technologies, who create creative effects plugins. And if you use code JaianMusic over on laser.io, you get 25% off. Every dollar of that goes straight back into the podcast, such as GoPro Kyo, who does all of the artwork. Please go give GoPro Kyo a follow, linked in the description. Go check out the myriad of anime Ghibli soundtrack covers I've made. I even have an album called A Ghibli Christmas, which is like literally Ghibli piano songs and bells. It works. And I also did anime arpeggios too, which is like ambient classical crossover pieces of Ghibli songs. And the opening of that one is Always With Me, which is the ending of Spirited Away, which is another fantastic piece in there that I wanted to mention. And you can follow the podcast in your favorite podcatcher, JaianMusic Notes, and follow me on social media at JaianMusic, and my website is JaianMusic.com. So for myself and Gab, this has been another episode of JaianMusic Notes. Bye, everyone.
See ya.